Mike sold a gun in a parking lot. Cash deal for $100. The buyer seemed normal, paid quickly, and left. 3 months later, federal agents kicked down Mike's door at 6 a.m. That gun was used in an armed robbery. Mike's now facing 10 years in federal prison. And here's the worst part: Mike had no idea he broke the law. He lives in a state where private sales are completely legal. No background check required. He thought he did everything right. So what went wrong? Today I'm revealing the 5 laws that 99% of private gun sellers don't know exist. These aren't obscure regulations buried in legal textbooks. These are federal laws that apply to every private sale in America, and violating even one of them can land you in prison for a decade. I'm talking about laws that turn regular gun owners into felons overnight. Laws the ATF uses to prosecute thousands of people every year. Laws that could destroy your life, even if you think you're following the rules. Law number 3 is the one that trapped Mike, and it's the most dangerous one because it doesn't matter what you knew, it matters what you should have known. That's the law that sends more gun owners to prison than all the others combined, and I guarantee most of you watching have never heard of it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which questions to ask before you sell, how to document everything to protect yourself, and the one mistake that'll get you charged with federal gun trafficking even if you only sold a single firearm. I'll tell you what Mike did wrong and how a simple 5-minute step could have saved him from federal prison. Let's get into it right now. Private gun sales are legal in most states. You own your guns, you can sell your property. But here's the reality. Nobody talks about federal law and doesn't care what your state allows. The ATF has rules that override everything, and they apply whether you're in Texas or California, whether you're selling 1 gun or 20. Most gun owners think private sales mean no rules. That's dead wrong. And it's exactly why people like Mike end up in federal court. We're talking 10+ years in federal prison. Felony conviction. Losing your gun rights permanently. Your name in the news labeled as an illegal gun dealer. Legal bills that bankrupt your family. And here's the kicker. You don't even have to know you're breaking the law. Ignorance is not a defense. The ATF investigates thousands of private sales every year using gun traces. When a firearm shows up at a crime scene, they track it back to the last legal owner. If they find any violation in how you sold it, they will prosecute you. And they do it all the time. You might think, I'd never sell to a criminal. I'm careful. I believe you. But careful isn't enough when the law says you're responsible for things you didn't even know you needed to check. Mike thought he was careful too. He still got arrested. The 5 laws I'm about to break down for you aren't suggestions. They're not guidelines. They're federal statutes that carry mandatory minimum sentences. And the scary part? Most gun owners violate at least one of them without realizing it. Let me show you how to avoid becoming a statistic. How many guns can you sell in a year before the federal government says you're an illegal firearms dealer? 5, 10. There's got to be a number, right? Wrong. There is no number. And that's exactly how they trap people. Federal law says if you're engaged in the business of dealing firearms without a license, you're committing a felony. 5 years in prison. But engaged in the business has no clear definition. The ATF decides case by case based on what they call totality of circumstances. They look at how often you sell, whether you're making a profit, if you're buying guns just to resell them, if you're advertising online, if you have business cards. And here's the terrifying part. They can decide you're a dealer even if you only sold 3 guns. Let me give you 2 examples. Guy number 1 has been collecting for 20 years. He sold 4 guns from his collection over 12 months to fund other purchases. He's thinning his safe. That's probably okay. Guy number 2 buys a gun, shoots it a few times, sells it for $50 more than he paid. Do it again next month. And again. He's only sold 4 guns too, but he's flipping for profit. The ATF will charge him with dealing without a license. Felony. Prison time. Same number of guns. Completely different legal outcome. Here's what nobody tells you: if you're buying guns with the intent to resell them, you're dealing. Period. Doesn't matter if it's your first gun or your 50th. Intent is what matters. And the ATF will use your text messages, your posts online, your bank records to prove intent. So if you're selling from your personal collection occasionally, you're fine. But if you're running even a small side hustle flipping firearms, you need an FFL or you're risking federal prison. Here's something that'll blow your mind. You can do the exact same gun sale in 2 locations 20 miles apart, and in one place you're completely legal, and in the other you're a felon facing 5 years in prison. Welcome to the nightmare of state-by-state gun laws. 21 states require background checks for all private sales as of 2025. 29 states don't. And if you don't know which category your state falls into, you're rolling the dice with your freedom. California, Colorado, Washington, Connecticut, New York, these states require you to go through a licensed dealer for private sales. Every single time. No exceptions. If you hand someone a gun in a parking lot in California, even if they have a CCW permit, you just committed a felony. But Texas, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, most of the South and Midwest, no background check required for private sales between state residents. But here's where it gets dangerous. People think, my state doesn't require checks, so I can sell however I want. Wrong. If you sell to someone from another state, federal law always requires that sale to go through a licensed dealer, even if you meet them in your state, even if their state doesn't require checks either. Any interstate sale without an FFL transfer is a federal crime. No exceptions. Let me paint a picture. You live in Texas. You post a gun for sale online. Guy from Louisiana messages you, says he'll drive to Texas to pick it up. You meet at a gas station in Houston. Texas doesn't require background checks for private sales, so you figure you're good. You hand him the gun, he hands you cash. You just committed a federal felony. That's an illegal interstate transfer. 5 years in federal prison. Always ask where the buyer lives before you agree to meet. If they're from out of state, the sale must go through an FFL in their home state. This applies even to family members. All right, here it is. Law number 3. This is the one that sent Mike to prison. This is the one the ATF uses more than any other law to prosecute private sellers. And this is the one that 99% of gun owners have never even heard of. Ready? It is a federal felony to sell a firearm to someone you know or have reasonable cause to believe is prohibited from owning guns. Let me say that again because this is critical. You don't have to know they're a prohibited person. You just have to have reasonable cause to believe it. That phrase, reasonable cause to believe, is how they get you. It means if there are red flags and you ignore them, you're guilty. Even if the buyer never tells you they're a felon. Even if you never ask. This is what happened to Mike. The buyer seemed nervous. I kept looking around, asked if they could skip the paperwork, offered Mike an extra $100 cash if they could keep it simple. Mike thought the guy was just private. Maybe didn't want his wife to know he bought another gun. Those were red flags. The buyer turned out to be a convicted felon. Mike had reasonable cause to believe something was off, and he ignored it. Federal prosecutors said Mike should have known. That's the standard. Should have known. Mike's doing 18 months in federal prison right now. So what are the red flags you need to watch for? The buyer refuses to show ID. Buyer offers way more than asking price for a quick, quiet sale. The buyer mentions anything about their criminal history, even casually. The buyer looks very young or very sketchy. The buyer wants to meet in a weird location at a weird time. The buyer asks you not to write anything down. Any of these should make you walk away. Because if you sell to them and they're prohibited, the ATF will say you had reasonable cause to believe they couldn't own a gun. So how do you protect yourself? First, always ask to see ID. Match the name to their face. Second, ask them directly, are you legally allowed to own a firearm? If they hesitate, walk away. Third, use a bill of sale that includes a signed statement saying they're not a prohibited person. In some states, you can even request a voluntary background check through an FFL for $25 to $50. That's the gold standard. It proves you did your due diligence. Law number 3 is the most dangerous law because it makes you responsible for things you didn't know and maybe couldn't have known. But if there are red flags and you ignore them, you will go to prison. Learn from Mike's mistake. Let me ask you something. Can you sell a gun to your brother if he lives in the next state over? Most people say yes. Family, right? You trust him. He's not a criminal. The answer is no. Not unless you go through a licensed dealer. Any firearm transfer across state lines, and I mean must go through an FFL. Doesn't matter if it's your brother, your best friend, or your dad. Doesn't matter if both states allow private sales. Federal law overrides everything. Here's how it works. You live in Tennessee, your brother lives in Kentucky. He wants to buy your rifle. You have to ship that rifle to an FFL in Kentucky. Your brother goes to that FFL, fills out a Form 4473, passes a background check, and picks up the gun. That's the only legal way. You cannot meet him halfway. You cannot drive to his house and hand it to him. You cannot ship it directly to him. Any of those options is a federal felony. The ATF tracks this stuff hard. When a gun shows up at a crime scene, they run a trace. They find out it crossed state lines in a private sale. They're coming for you. And the penalties are steep, 5 years minimum. And they'll add gun trafficking charges if they think you were doing it regularly. Quick thing, if this video is saving you from making a massive legal mistake, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. I put out videos every week breaking down gun laws that could land you in serious trouble if you don't know them. All right, let's keep going. Bottom line on interstate sales, state lines matter. Always. If the buyer lives in a different state, you must use an FFL. Period. It costs $25 to $75 depending on the dealer. That's a lot cheaper than federal prison. Here's something the ATF doesn't want you to know. There's one simple thing you can do that'll protect you from almost every legal problem we've talked about. It takes 5 minutes and costs you nothing. Most gun owners never do it. Documentation, a bill of sale, a paper trail that proves you did everything right. Now, federal law doesn't require you to keep records of private sales in most cases. But let me tell you why you should anyway. Remember Mike? If he had a bill of sale with the buyer's name, ID number, signature, and a statement that the buyer wasn't prohibited, Mike would have walked away from those federal charges. The ATF would have seen he did his due diligence. Instead, he had nothing. No proof, no protection. Here's what your bill of sale should include: date of sale, your name and address, buyer's name and address, copy of buyer's ID, make, model, and serial number of the firearm, sale price, and most importantly, a signed statement from the buyer that says, "I am not prohibited from owning firearms under federal or state law." That last part is your get-out-of-jail-free card, because if that gun shows up at a crime scene, you can show the ATF you asked, you documented, you did everything a reasonable person would do. Some states actually do require record keeping for private sales. Illinois, for example, requires the buyer to have a firearm owner identification card, and you're supposed to verify it. Connecticut requires a specific authorization form. Know your state's rules. I've got a free bill of sale template linked in the description below. Print a stack of them. Keep them in your car, in your range bag, wherever. Every time you sell a gun, fill one out. Keep a copy for at least 5 years. Some people keep them forever. This is your insurance policy. It takes 5 minutes. It costs nothing, and it could save you from spending a decade in federal prison if something goes wrong down the line. Don't skip this step. All right, let's blow through 5 myths about private gun sales that could get you arrested. These are things I hear all the time, and they're all dead wrong. Myth number 1. Private sales mean no rules. Wrong. Federal law applies to every gun sale in America. Private just means you're not a licensed dealer. You still have to follow the law. Myth number 2. As long as I don't know they're a felon, I'm fine. Nope. The standard is reasonable cause to believe. If there are red flags and you ignore them, you're guilty. Willful ignorance will not save you. Myth number 3. The gun show loophole means I can sell at gun shows with no background checks. There's no such thing as a gun show loophole. The laws are exactly the same at a gun show as they are in your driveway. Location doesn't change the rules. Myth number 4. I can go to a state with looser laws and sell there to avoid my state's rules. You're subject to the laws of both states, plus federal law. You can't state shop your way out of regulations. Myth number 5. As long as I don't make a profit, the ATF can't say I'm dealing. Profit motive is one factor the ATF looks at, not the only factor. Frequency, intent, how you advertise, all of that matters too. Those 5 myths get people arrested every year. Don't be one of them. So let's circle back to Mike. What exactly did he do wrong? The buyer showed multiple red flags. He was nervous, kept looking around, offered extra cash to keep it simple, and didn't want to show ID. Mike ignored all of it because he wanted to make the sale. That buyer was a convicted felon. Mike violated law number 3. He had reasonable cause to believe the buyer was prohibited, and he sold to him anyway. The ATF didn't care that Mike didn't ask. They didn't care that the buyer didn't volunteer the information. Mike should have known. That's the standard. And now he's in federal prison serving 18 months. One bill of sale, one question, one moment of saying, "This doesn't feel right, I'm walking away." That's all it would have taken. Let's recap the 5 laws. Law number 1. Don't get engaged in the business without an FFL. Law number 2. Know your state's background check requirements and never sell across state lines without an FFL. Law number 3. Never sell to someone with red flags. Reasonable cause to believe they're prohibited is enough to convict you. Law number 4. All interstate sales must go through an FFL, even family. Law number 5. Document everything with a bill of sale. Here's what you do right now. First, know your state's specific laws. I've linked a state-by-state breakdown in the description. Second, download the free bill of sale template I've included. Third, always ask for ID and ask if the buyer is legally allowed to own firearms. Fourth, when in doubt, go through an FFL. $25 to $50 is way cheaper than federal prison. I've linked that bill of sale template and the state-by-state legal guide in the description below. If this video just saved you from a catastrophic legal mistake, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment and tell me, what state are you in, and have you ever sold a gun privately? I'm curious how many of you knew these 5 laws before watching this. In the next video, I'm breaking down what happens when you inherit firearms from a family member. It's another legal minefield that trips people up constantly. You're going to want to watch that one. Last thing is educational content, not legal advice. Gun laws are complicated and they change. Always consult a qualified attorney in your state before any firearms transaction. Better safe than sorry. Stay legal, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.